To be continued. 3 little words that hold the secret to the next great story. 3 words that will thrill you, confound you, give life to new possibilities. Every variation of to be continued is a promise of adventure, a promise of excitement, a promise of unseen wonders and unexplored worlds. A promise that every issue you read makes you a part of a never-ending journey, and behind every page there will be an unopened door waiting for you. This story to be continued at your local comic book shop today. Visit comicshoplocator.com today.
Only on The Experience this weekend, Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, with hosts Amy Chu and Ming Chen. Tune in Saturday and Sunday for great conversations with great creators and a celebration of the heritage that these creators have brought to comics. Saturday and Sunday, only on The Experience.
Hi everybody, I'm Miss Jen and you're watching us here on The Experience today. This is Talking Shop. We have this show every single week trying to bring to you all the information that you need to know so that you can go and run to your local comic shop and get these books on your pull list / get them on the wish list so you do not miss them. So without further ado, we're going to talk to Jeremy Holt.
Hey, how's it going?
I have to tell you, Jeremy super impressed me. We accidentally told them a time, but not a time zone to go on. So
totally okay. I
usually
ask, and I forgot. So my bad.
It's the kind of thing I do all the time. I forget to ask which time zone. I'm super on time, but for not the time zone we're in.
Right.
So it's interesting. I went and looked at all of the rest of your work, and I noticed that you do a lot of work with Insight, Simon & Schuster. Is that where everything is up until now?
Yeah, with the exception of my first publication, Southern Dog, that came out through Action Lab in 2013.
Oh, wow. I love Action Lab. I need to go find that.
Yeah, I think it's. I think there's still copies available. I've heard it's kind of hard to track down, but I think it's still available.
So how did you get started distributing through Simon & Schuster, which I think of as kind of like, it's definitely lots of comic books and graphic novels come out through them. But I'm so used to seeing everyone's beginning work being a like small press comic book. How did you decide on that, or did they connect with you?
It's a really long, convoluted story, but I guess the cliff notes is I had emailed an editor at he was working at I think Penguin Random House for their comic imprint called Ink Lit, and I found his email. I don't remember how I found his email, but I sent him what was the original Houdini pitch. It was just called Houdini at the time, and I sent him that, and he liked it enough that he took it upon himself to shop it around, and I had not heard of Insight. And he was the one who kind of found a home there for me. And that's kind of how I got in with them. And they were super supportive. And I did 4 books with them. And they happened to be distributed by Simon & Schuster, which was great.
That's wonderful. I do want to know a little bit about Southern Dog, since I didn't get to read any of that book. What's the soft pitch?
Teen Wolf set in the Deep South 6 weeks before Obama's inauguration. So it's basically a coming of age of a teenager who is noticing difficulties within his own family, worldviews that he doesn't align with, that are shared between his father and his brother. His mom is kind of his safe haven to speak freely about, feeling uncomfortable about what he's perceiving and understanding is racism. And he goes on this hunting trip with his brother and his father and gets bit by this wolf, and the combination of going through puberty and this rabid wolf bite triggers this reaction where when he has these panic attacks from the trauma of the attack, he transforms into a werewolf. But really, he's not the real monster in his town. It's the racial violence that's starting to sprout up, and he needs to confront that.
I like how you draw from like what you've experienced growing up, probably about how it feels to be kind of like seen a little bit differently just from your appearance. I haven't experienced it except for, people assuming certain things about me because I'm a girl.
Right. Yeah, the biases are always a problem, and I definitely drew from my ongoing experiences with racism in its varying degrees. Even living overseas for half my life, I experienced it over there, both in Europe and even in Scandinavia. And for me, the bigger theme throughout all my books, with the exception of probably one of them, is identity. So Southern Dog was kind of my first publication. I had written a couple of pitches before then, but it was the one that I was surprised actually I went with it, because it'd been rejected by everybody, because I understand it's a heavy topic. Nobody wants to talk about racism. Nobody wants to talk about the KKK. But I just figured that, a werewolf story set in the Deep South is just prime for a prime conflict, because hunting culture in the South is like a religion. Mm-hmm. And why not throw a werewolf into that mix?
I think it's also, I think it is a topic that's very acceptable now because people want to talk about it and work through it. I'm kind of thinking when you're talking about Deep South and werewolves, I'm thinking also about Deep South and vampires that Donny Cates has got. Oh, yeah. Redneck. It basically is talking about the same kinds of things because he has a definite LGBTQ aspect to his vampire family, and it's kind of an interesting thing to see that all those things go together.
Yeah, definitely several years apart between my book and his, but it's one of those books that I would love to revisit with an updated narrative. I think for most of my, for lack of a better term, career, I was writing a lot of white savior stories. I'm adopted, so as a transracial adoptee, that's been a complex issue for me, and I definitely, for the longest time, just viewed myself as white, and I understand where that comes from. I understand why I thought that, and in 2017, I decided to stop writing white male cis protagonists and write stories that were more authentic to myself, stories that featured more of my personal narratives, and from there, I've actually found more success and have resonated with readers more effectively.
Mm-hmm. And I love so much just the basic pitch for Made in Korea, just this idea. And does the kind of the twist in the book about the main character, is that laid out right at the beginning? Because that part of the twist that's in the actual, like, here, this is the reason why you want to buy the book that they've got online, that feels like a really big twist.
That is one of them. There's probably a bigger plot point that people won't see coming that I don't really want to shed too much light on, because I think I will be more comfortable openly talking about it after issue 3 drops. Mm-hmm. But the adoption angle really wasn't something that I was, hiding, or even the fact that she's AI. I think that, I want to make that very clear. And, I didn't get really bogged down by the hard science of telling an artificial intelligence story, because that really wasn't my main focus. It was more the human elements of what it would be like to both interact with a true AI system, and also what is life like for that AI system to grow up in a world where, she thinks she knows who she is. Like, no one's saying what she isn't. Mm-hmm. And it's when she slowly starts to peel back the layers of the complexities of her life and having to kind of process it all in real time. That's to me the more interesting component.
Yeah, I'm telling you right now, tomorrow when our books enter the store, that I'm going to make a beeline for it. I as a store owner, I do get lots of PDFs from folks, and I so appreciate it. But I find for myself that I don't get the same emotional hit from a book unless I have it in my hand, which doesn't make a lot of sense, right? It's the difference between paper and the digital. But for me, I almost across the board wait unless I just can't get a hold of the book, right? There's a week sometimes when we don't get our books at all, but I still have to do my live reviews. So then I'm relegated to reading the digital part of it. But so I find myself also wanting to be timely about, I want to read it right ahead of when I'm having, like I'm conveying what I feel about what I just read, because I'm doing
that's awesome, because I actually haven't, I got my early comps last week, and I actually have not seen the thing in print since, or up until last week. And the first issue is something I've been staring at for like 4 years. So it's kind of wild to see it in print. I don't really have a shop close to me, so I stopped going to shops every Wednesdays, which I miss. So it's nice to hear that, that's what you're looking forward to.
What part of the country are you in?
I live in Vermont.
Vermont, man, I would love to tell you I know exactly where there's a shop near you, but I'd have to do some research.
There is one in Burlington, but I just found out, I know one of the shop clerks there, and he was telling me that they are opening up again probably in the second week of June, but they've been closed throughout the pandemic. So
what brought you into the medium of creating comic books? Do you have a background in that? Did you go to college and get some skills for that?
No, I went to film school.
Oh, wow.
But specifically for sound design, which is as far away from telling narrative as you can get within the industry of film and TV. So I did that for about a year. I worked at a sound studio in New York City, and I just had all these odd jobs, and I'd given up on creating. I hadn't found really the medium of art that was more of a reflex than a conscious decision. And it wasn't until 2008 that my oldest brother, who used to collect comics, kind of got me into reading them, and he gave me the Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, which kind of opened my eyes to what comics are. And then I went back to my shop near my apartment in Manhattan, Forbidden Planet, and I just started buying up anything that sounded interesting, and Vertigo was my gateway. And when I read Brian K. Vaughan and Pia Guerre's Why the Last Man, that's when I decided to write comics.
So the big question then, if your big get was the Why the Last Man, how excited are you / scared are you of them actually getting it to the screen? Don't want to see it because you've already got the perfect world in your brain, or are you excited to see what they're going to make of it?
I'm excited. I think that the fact that BKV seems to be on board and supporting it. I've even had brief interactions with Eliza Clark, who's the showrunner. Her and I interact on Instagram, which is pretty cool. And you can see a lot of behind the scenes stuff that she posts. And everyone is super passionate about it. And the casting alone has me excited. So yeah, and I think that with adaptations, I like the creators that kind of let go of it and say, I did my thing. Mm-hmm. Now it's your turn to tell your version. And I think that products tend to be better when there's that mutual trust. And I feel like that there is that trust between the creators of the comic book series and the showrunner.
Yep, that's a good reminder of it. I've got producers reminding me this is a live show. So if you are watching and you have any questions for Jeremy, you should absolutely ask them. We'll make sure to get them on the air for you so you can hear the answer. I was just thinking, since you went to school for sound design, does that play in to anything for your creative process for comic books? Do you think about how things sound? Does that convey to a comic?
That's a really great question. No one's ever asked me that. I'd say maybe subconsciously. For Made in Korea, I had to come up with a lot of sound effects that were very challenging because, if anyone was sitting next to me, they would just think I was going crazy, just making noises and then looking up sound effects and then trying to create the phonetic words for it, and especially with something like the breaking of concrete, what does that even sound like? So that didn't. I think maybe it has. I did a one shot, which is the only thing I've self-published, which is titled Pulp, and you can get it on Comixology. And that actually was a really fun exercise to see if I could tell a complete story in 24 pages. And it relies heavily on the sound. The sound actually moves the story along more than the dialogue, which was another thing that I wanted to try out and see if I could do it.
Oh, this is a good question. Jennifer Burns says, do you hear how the sound effects would be, or like a soundtrack to comics as you're making them?
Yes, I think I definitely create soundtracks when I'm writing, and I will actually create soundtracks for the main character. I feel like if I understand what music they're listening to, I know them a whole lot better. So yeah, I need music to get me into that headspace to start writing, because sometimes me just staring at a screen is not very effective.
What I've found a lot in talking to creators is that, we're all excited about the thing that comes out on Wednesday for you, but you probably are already 2 or 3 projects into new things. Are there any other projects that you're working on that you can talk about?
I don't think I can talk about them, but yeah, I'm excited about a young adult graphic novel that I'm writing currently. It's my first foray into young adult fiction. I will say it's taking a beloved classic novel, and I am contemporizing it, and just making it more of this story that I would want to read. The source material is very, very, very white. And I think that telling an updated version requires a diverse cast of characters, which I'm really excited about. And hopefully my agent can find a home for it.
So this is something that you decided on instead of collaborating.
Yes. It's something that I actually wrote it as a prose novel, the concept, and then I wrote this novel. It wasn't very good, and then I decided, actually, this would be more fun with, as a comic book, as a graphic novel. So I just adapted it, and through the adaptation process, I've just revised upon the original concept, and I think it keeps getting better with each revision.
Are there any other hidden talents that you have also done, or that you would love to do?
Hidden talents. I don't think so. I think I would like to in the next few years, and this is just kind of manifesting destiny, but I would like to be writing for television, I think, in the next few years. My day job that pays the bills is doing tech support, so some might say that that's a special talent, fixing computers, but it definitely was very informative when I was developing Made in Korea, and just learning about AI, and I have friends that, I have a friend that works in one of the AI divisions at Google, which has been really helpful. So yeah, but I'd eventually like to be writing full time, and I think writing for television would be great, to be part of a writer's room, to collaborate and just flesh out stories and make them as compelling as possible.
Do you have a favorite genre that you like to write in?
No, I specifically try to write outside of any genre I feel comfortable in. So I think the thing that I feel comfortable writing is really dark narrative. So I constantly have to tell myself, make it fun, make it fun. Nobody wants to read a downer. But I've written horror, sci-fi, romantic comedy, historical fiction, revisionist histories. So I like to just challenge myself in that regard.
Do you ever find yourself writing personal aspects about yourself into your characters, or do you try on purpose to write completely things that are not anything like you?
For the first, I'd say, handful of years, I'd say maybe the first seven or 8 years, I definitely just wrote kind of to this imaginary audience or to an editor I was trying to impress. And if there's any writers out there, don't do this. It's a fool's errand. You're never going to understand or even predict what an editor wants or what an audience wants to read. The best thing I've realized is, if I'm writing these characters, to me they become my friends. I have these very rich inner worlds I spend a lot of time in, And if I'm not interested in hanging out with them, no one's going to be interested in reading about them. So in 2017, I decided to stop writing these white savior stories, stop writing white male cis protagonists. And I infused a lot of personal experiences in the last couple books that I've written. Virtually Yours is probably the first example of that, where, a lot of people have asked me, why did I write a domestic violence narrative into a romantic comedy? Because it doesn't seem like they go together. But I just wanted to kind of feature the aspect of a relationship outside of the honeymoon phase. And I love romantic comedies. They're one of my favorite genres to get lost in. But, I wanted to take some of those tropes and turn them inside out. And, and I've been very open about this, but I was in a physically and emotionally abusive marriage for 3 years that took me a while to understand and a while to get out of. And when I'm writing about something now, if an idea comes into my head and I get very uncomfortable by it, that thought is immediately followed with, you got to write about it. So, it's been cathartic and it's been amazing, specifically with Virtually Yours, for other males to come forward and tell me that, they've experienced something similar and that abuse isn't one-sided regarding gender. And, that's why I decided to write about that stuff.
I think it's right what you're saying, that often you don't know that what you're writing is going to be helpful to someone that's working through something. So that it makes you uncomfortable doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad thing to write about.
Yeah, I think for me, my initial thought early on about writing some of my personal thoughts into my work was that nobody wanted to hear about my problems. But I think that we all have problems. So if you try to write stories that are problem-free, it feels disingenuous. You can't relate to it. I mean, something one of my editors said to me was that I was just too gentle with my characters. Like I'd hold them to the brink of falling off the cliff, but then I'd reel them back in. And he says, you gotta let them fall. You gotta let them hit the ground and see what happens. And that was some of the best advice I've ever been given, because I realized I was too precious with these characters. And yeah, part of me doesn't want to see them hurt, but sometimes you got to hurt them for them to grow and be stronger. Just like I've gone through my own personal traumas, and it's made me stronger working through them.
It's a brave thing to do.
Therapy.
Yes. Yeah, it's one thing because then you have to kind of like live with it, right? It's people ask you about it often, but maybe the dealing with it often kind of deadens its power. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I'm taking ownership of these things. I'm no longer pretending they didn't exist. I'm no longer, thinking that, I can just ignore it, or it's so far in the past. What I've learned is, if you walk around a conflict, you end up just walking in a circle, and you got to really work through it to get to the other side. And Virtually Yours was a good example of that. And Made in Korea, on a kind of a different, in a different way, but same impact, was exploring my feelings about being a transracial adoptee, about my identity, about trying to fit in, about, what society thinks of me, and then wrap up all of that inside the complexities of a true AI child who doesn't, necessarily understand that she's different than anyone else. She just is taking everything at face value. Granted, her learning is moving at an accelerated pace, but she just wants what we all want. We just want to be accepted, and we want friends, and we want to connect with others, and to be loved and to love people.
Mm-hmm. The main character's name is it Jesse?
Mm-hmm.
That's right. I like that name. So, do you like watch a lot of like TV? Are you a streaming person? Is there anything that you're in love with right now that you were like, everyone else should be watching this thing?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I've been obsessed when developing this story. I was obsessed with the work of Alex Garland. So Ex Machina, I think, is a masterclass in filmmaking. His Hulu original series Devs was also an elevation from Ex Machina. Really smart, well-written characters and story. Spike Jonze' Her was also another huge influence on this story. And Neil Blomkamp's work, Chappie, Elysium, even District 9. were works that I thought were really well done and really compelling AI stories. And so those were huge influences. But as far as what I'm obsessed with now, I think right now I'm just really obsessed with connecting with other Asian Americans, telling Asian American stories. I recently read Michelle Zauner's memoir, Crying in H Mart. She's the front woman for the band Japanese Breakfast, which is a band I love, and I've been obsessed with that book, and I've been telling everyone to read it. But Made in Korea is interesting timing. The fact that it was basically greenlit 2 years ago. And it's only coming out now, granted, because of the pandemic. But I think with Hollywood recognizing Asian American talent or even Asian talent, I think it's perfect timing for this book to come out.
Right in the middle of Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Could it be any more perfect?
I don't think so.
It's meant to be, right?
I think so.
Do you have any music you like to jam to on a regular?
Anybody who knows me will be able to answer this. I am obsessed with the band Nirvana, so much so that I wrote a graphic novel called Skip to the End that is a revisionist history of the band. I fictionalized the band's name, and it focuses on this one song of theirs, but it's the idea that music is a form of time travel. So it deals with loss, trauma, addiction. Again, a pretty heavy story, but yeah. So Nirvana I probably listen to every day. But recently I've just been obsessed with Phoebe Bridgers' work. She's probably one of my favorites right now. But I'm always looking for music, and it's like a daily fun activity for me is finding new bands.
So Phoebe Bridges, you said?
Phoebe Bridgers.
Oh, Bridgers. I'll write it down. Oh, Hannah, my coworker, had big light up eyes, so she'll be able to hook me up with who that is. I'm always looking for cool new music to throw in I listen to everything except for country, which is weird because I'm in Houston, right?
That is a little weird.
And I love bluegrass. Yeah, that's fine. But
there's like old time, like twangy bluegrass country I really like Loretta Lynn and oh god, more of the honky tonk sound I really do like.
I had a big argument with someone the other day. They're like, bluegrass is country. I'm like, oh, no.
Yeah,
it's a different genre, I can promise you. Well, if anyone wanted to connect with you and follow you, where's the best place for them to follow you, Jeremy?
I am on the social medias, Twitter and Instagram at Jeremy Holt Books, and my website is jeremyholtbooks.com.
It's a really great website. That is actually how I connected with Jeremy. It's so funny when I know who I want to interview, and sometimes it becomes this impossible task. It is the craziest thing where I'm just like, please help me find them. I was so happy when you emailed me back. It was like squeeing inside. It was like, yay!
Yeah, I mean, I definitely spent the time building my site when I was basically looking for a literary agent. Some advice I'd heard was, have a website because you need that visibility. So I definitely took the time to make a website I'm pretty proud of, and I think it's got a clean look to it and it's easy to navigate.
Absolutely. All right, everyone out there in Experience Land, definitely make sure to connect with your local comic shop for Wednesday's release of A Made in Korea, because I have just a gut feeling that it is going to be one of those things that ends up on the rack and disappears on day one. And then everyone's going to be scrambling for a copy. So don't be one of those people. Say to yourself, I was a smart person and listened to advice and went and got my copy earlier, called my LCS and said, put that in my polls. And then make sure you subscribe to it too, that you don't just get the issue number one. That's not good, because then you don't know how the story ends. That's always horrible.
Yeah, I think people are going to, hopefully if I've done my job, the cliffhanger is going to make them want to read the next issue.
So there'll be those few people that just pick it up off the rack are going to be like scrambling, put it in my box forever. I'm a sucker for a good cliffhanger, so I look forward to that. All right, everybody, we have run out of time. Everyone, thank you so much, Jeremy, for joining us. We're so happy to have you on the show. And anytime you want to come back, you've got a new project, please let us know. We'll have you on again. Boost your signal. All right, everybody, we'll be right back on The Experience. You'll see me again, but, with selling books. Bye.
Only on The Experience this weekend, Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, with hosts Amy Chu and Ming Chen. Tune in Saturday and Sunday for great conversations with great creators and a celebration of the heritage that these creators have brought to comics. Saturday and Sunday, only on The Experience.